In this video, I'm gonna reveal the 10 biggest mistakes I've seen beginning and new Uber drivers and Lyft drivers make, especially when it comes to trying to make more money. I've interviewed, at this point, well over 1,000 drivers, if not thousands of drivers, all around the world in different parts, both online and offline. And after all these years, especially for me being a former Uber and Lyft driver as well, I've noticed these specific 10 things that looks like you're trying to optimize your earnings. You're trying to make the most amount of money driving, get the highest ratings, and overall have a good time driving and enjoy driving. These are the 10 biggest mistakes new drivers make. Number 1, only driving for one app. Now, my dedicated subscribers are probably getting annoyed with me because my two biggest pieces of advice is sign up for both Uber and Lyft, and your location is the number one factor that determines how much money you can make when it comes to driving for Uber and Lyft. And if I come off annoying, that's probably a good thing. And the main reason why is with all the drivers I've interviewed and talked to, I've noticed that if you're the type of person that says, hey, you know what, I'm only driving for Uber, and you don't drive for Lyft, or you don't even sign up, you're gonna limit yourself of how much money you could potentially make. In some areas, Uber pays more. In some areas, Lyft pays more. In addition, even in the same area, and I'm making something up, maybe Uber pays more during the week, but Lyft pays more on the weekend, or vice versa. And in addition, when it comes to these apps, remember, it's free to sign up. You don't have to really spend anything. There's no quota. It's not like Lyft or Uber says, hey, you have to do 5 rides a month, or we're going to deactivate your account. And speaking of deactivations, that can also be an issue as well. That, like, if you're driving for one app, a dispute happens with a passenger, and they say, hey, you know what? They're making something up. They're attacking you, or whatever, in terms of saying, oh, my driver did this. They're making stuff up to Uber and Lyft. They go to deactivate your account. You have another one on deck just in case. In addition, bonuses and incentives. To give you these quick bullet points, I've already done a bunch of videos about driving for both apps. Bonuses and incentives. On some weekends, Uber is going to have a crazy bonus. On another weekend, Lyft might have a crazy bonus. Just in general, if you drive for both apps, you're going to optimize how much money you can make. When I first started driving, I only drove for Lyft. Didn't see the point to Uber. Rookie mistake. Then I signed up for Uber. I figured, hey, why not? Once I signed up for Uber, I realized, wait a minute, Uber's paying way more. Then I only drove for Uber. And then I checked Lyft off and on and then realized, wait a minute, for whatever reason, now after a few months, Lyft's paying more. Went back to Lyft. You can go back and forth. And this is a big mistake I know a lot of drivers make, especially in the beginning, because I get it. You're like, hey, I'm going to drive. I'll just pick Uber. I'll pick Uber. Why do I really need another one? I already have Uber. Why do I need another app? Just do it. When you sign up with both, you're going to optimize how much money you can make. Number 2, driving randomly. Now, when it comes to this list, I'm going to say there are mainly 2 big ones, which I'll talk about a bit later in this video. 2 big ones that I've noticed are the biggest factors to determine how much money you can make in terms of the drivers who don't make that much and the drivers who do make that much. This is one of those, and that is driving randomly. I've noticed that when I interview drivers who make a lot, who are really happy with their earnings, they're very strategic when they drive. Now, of course, in case you didn't know, kind of Uber and Lyft 101, but the peak hours are the best times to drive. 7 to 9 a.m., 5 to 7 p.m., and then Friday and Saturday nights. Most people know this, right, when there's a lot of traffic. But what I notice is when I talk to the drivers who make a lot of money, not only do they drive during the peak hours, of course, but they find ways to optimize their earnings. They don't just turn on the app when they feel like it and turn it off. They look at the past week and say, okay, I drove here and here. This one time was actually better. This one time actually wasn't. This one time, maybe I should run that back, right? So they start optimizing when they drive. They actually are very, very strategic and have hacks and tricks and all this kind of stuff to figure out the best time to drive. This is why in a lot of the pro tip videos I've done on this channel, I talk about, for example, how some drivers figured out after doing a lot of testing that their favorite time to drive is from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. Because from 4 a.m. to about 7 or 8, you're looking at about a bunch of airport rides. And if airport rides pay a lot in your city, depends city to city, that could be a great time to drive. And then after those airport rides, around 7-ish, you're looking from 7 to 9 a.m., maybe 10 a.m. Now you're looking at the morning commuting hours. Now you can make money doing that. Right now, for me, I never did that. Did not seem appealing to me, but I know some drivers, and I get it. We're like, hey, I'd much rather wake up at 3:30, drive from 4 to 10. I'm done for the day, and now I have the entire day, beautiful day. If I want to go to the beach, if I want to just, go to the park or go for a hike, like I have the entire day with sunlight to do whatever I want. In addition, I've talked about in other videos, for example, when doing my own testing, I got the pregame hours that I found on Friday and Saturday nights. Looks if I didn't want to go out, like say I had a DJ gig, like say you just don't want to deal with drunk people, for example, I find from like 5 or 6 to like 8 or 9, as I'm going to call the pregame hours, where people are not drunk yet, although you never know, but they're getting ready to go out. And so they're getting an Uber to go to their friend's place to start drinking. And at that point, I noticed that sometimes those surges could be just as good as that Friday night or that Saturday night, right? Granted, it does depend. But this is a big thing I suggest. And there's a lot of different ways I could tackle this one point. And I don't want to have to like harp on it longer than I have to. But my big thing is this. Make sure when it comes to you driving, don't just drive around aimlessly. Don't just turn on the app when you feel like it, turn it off when you feel like it. Try to look back on the past week after driving, and it depends city to city, area to area. The just logistics and the layout of each area is a bit different. Each location is a bit different. And look and say, okay, I realize that maybe in your area, maybe Friday nights didn't pay that much, but Saturday and Sunday mornings paid more. That's something I notice sometimes. Like a Sunday fun day, like say here in LA, is pretty popular. Sometimes the surges are crazy, sometimes even crazier than a Friday or Saturday night, right? So this really does depend. And so the best advice I can give to my beginning drivers is that although it seems appealing and maybe less stressful, if I'd use that word, to just turn on the app and just drive and make money, I'd say start to be a little more strategic. Look at the past week, every week. And I even remember I did this, I had an Excel spreadsheet. You know, I'm a former accountant, so I know very accounting of me, but I had an Excel spreadsheet and I used to track the most optimal times to drive in Boston. And then I was like, okay, and then I started to kind of create my own strategy and formula to make a ton of money, way more money than it was before, because before I would just turn on the app and just drive. You know, and I noticed I made a ton of money once I started doing this spreadsheet. Once I started being like, okay, you know, I noticed, for example, another interesting pro tip, when it comes to the morning commuting hours, I was better off not driving from 8 a.m. to 8:20, sometimes even 8:25, than turning on the app at 8:25. Because typically my rides in the morning would go from the residential area to like say the financial area or the downtown area of Boston. And I realized that at 8 o'clock, surges went high. And I really only have one ride from 8 to about 8:45. So if I waited 20 minutes and turned the app off, even though it seemed like I was kind of being stupid by turning it off for 20 minutes, when I would turn it back on at 8:20, the surges would be way higher. So because I could only do really one ride from 8 to 8:45, I was better off waiting, then turning on the app at 8:20, then getting a wicked good surge, and then bringing somebody into that downtown area. Again, these are the things that I learned after not just driving aimlessly, but then really starting to harp on, okay, let me try to optimize every time I drive, how I can make the most amount of money. Number 3, not having rideshare insurance. Just get it. This is something I think as a beginning driver, you might be like, why do I need it? I already have auto insurance, but here's the thing. One, some auto insurances do cover you driving for Uber and Lyft, some don't. So make sure that you tell your auto insurance like, hey, I am driving for Uber and Lyft just in case, because auto insurances will use any excuse they can to not cover you. And if you tell them like, hey, I got into an accident, it wasn't my fault, but I was driving for Uber and Lyft, and they hear that, they might not cover you. And this does happen. And I've gotten a lot of comments on this channel of someone saying, yeah, Mark, I'm not gonna lie, got into an accident, my auto insurance did not cover me. In addition, on the flip side, I've had people say, hey, Mark, you know, I signed for rideshare insurance, I went through my own insurance company. Sometimes you might have to go through another one, it does depend. And they're like, yeah, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I actually did sign up for this rideshare insurance, in addition to my auto insurance, got into an accident, my auto insurance did not want to cover me. Uber and Lyft wasn't helpful, but that rideshare insurance I did sign up with, very, very helpful. You're looking at about $6 to $30 extra a month when it comes to rideshare insurance. It does depend on a lot of different factors, your driving history, et cetera, et cetera. Just get it. Because I'm telling you, one accident, like say one issue that happens, as you can imagine, on the road, and like say you don't have insurance to cover it, is going to cost way more money. And that little amount you're going to spend on rideshare insurance, especially if you're driving full time, well worth it. Number 4, the big 3. These are the 3 things you pretty much have to have in your car. They're not required in terms of driving for Uber and Lyft by the companies, but you do really have to have them. Phone mount, dash cam, phone charger, straight up. One, when it comes to a phone mount, I mean, don't hold it in your hand. I see some drivers still doing this. I don't know how, like even like say if you don't drive for Uber and Lyft, most people use their GPS when it comes to their phone. Having the phone mount makes it a lot safer and easier. Second, a dash cam. I look at this very similar to insurance where hopefully you never have to use that footage, but it's there just in case. Like say if you're driving, you get into an accident, it's your word against theirs. Now you have the dash cam footage to show your side of the story. In addition, and this does happen, like say something happens inside of your car. Very, very rare. But again, if we're talking about safety and everything, you want to be as safe as possible. Having that dash cam, one, people tend to be on better behaviors, right? If they're like say being a bit rowdy, they know they're being recorded by the dash cam. But 2, if let's say there's a dispute with a passenger, this does happen. If let's say there's just an issue, something goes down, you have the footage when it comes to that dash cam, well worth the money. And then 3, a phone charger. As you can imagine, if you're running Uber and Lyft, remember, sign up with both apps, like you're using Google Maps and then like say Spotify or Pandora to play music, your phone's gonna die a lot quicker. So I do suggest having a phone charger. If you wanna get more specific, maybe get 2, like a port that you plug in, one in your phone, so your phone's always charging, and then the second one you could pass back, because sometimes people do ask for chargers. Besides that, I don't really think you need anything else in your car. I don't think you need gum or mints or candy, snacks, water. I know a lot of beginning drivers have asked me about this. At this point in time, no one really expects it. Now, back in the day, in case you didn't know, this is actually over like 10 years ago. I first took an Uber, or I think it was a Lyft, actually, if I had to pick the right one. I think it was a Lyft in 2014. And back in the day, the companies did kind of push their drivers to buy candy and snacks and gum because they wanted people to have a more unique experience than just taking a taxi, for example. So they're like, hey, why not have a Snickers bar and water on your way to the venue, for example? Now, no one really expects that. But dash cam, phone mount, phone charger, definitely have them. Number 5, ignoring bonuses and incentives. Now, like I mentioned, there were 2 on this list that I notice are the big make or breaks in terms of the drivers who make a lot of money and those who don't. 1, like I said, driving around aimlessly. 2nd is avoiding the bonuses. And I see this with a lot of beginning drivers that they might see a bonus or incentive. You might overlook it. You might be like, oh, cool, but you don't really harp on it. And I've noticed that the drivers who make a lot of money, 1, like I said, don't drive around aimlessly. They have a crazy strategy. But 2, and these do kind of go hand in hand, I'll mention that, is they're masterminds when it comes to the bonus. I notice this a lot in different cities. I think the biggest city I noticed where it was so apparent, because I guess it was big on the bonuses, is Denver. And I remember talking to some drivers who were like, yeah, driving's okay here. I make 20-ish an hour. And I'm like, all right, okay, 20 an hour, kind of standard. I'd say the average driver, in case you didn't know, if I had to give one average around the country, 20 to 25 an hour. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of average, 20 to 25. And then I interview some drivers, and they're like, oh, I love driving in Denver. I'm like, oh, okay, so how much do you make? And they're like, well, about 40 an hour. And I'm like, that's a pretty ridiculous spread. Like, I'd had some drivers be like 20, 25. Other drivers be like, yeah, 35 to 40, sometimes even close to 45. And I'm like, how come this one group of drivers is getting 20 to 25, and the other group of drivers is getting almost double the average hourly rate? And the main reason why, the number one word I heard from every driver who's making that money, bonuses. That apparently during this time when I was interviewing all these drivers in Denver, because I was living there for a month, the biggest thing was the bonuses. And this is a big thing I think a lot of beginning drivers overlook, that you might know it. You might be like, okay, yeah, I get it, that under Uber I can see different opportunities and different things going on in the Uber driver app or on the Lyft driver app. But really study them, because I noticed interviewing a lot of drivers, the drivers that make a lot of money have their own hacks and tricks. They're like, oh, I found this way to optimize this one bonus to make a ton of money. I do this, this, and this. And they have all these tricks and unique strategies. They almost look at it like a chess match. Like, they're literally not just playing checkers, they're playing chess, right? And that's what I noticed, that these two do go hand in hand. Like the past point I mentioned, when it comes to driving around aimlessly, that they're very strategic about how when they drive, and then when they combine that with the bonuses and incentives, it's almost supercharged. And I suggest to a lot of drivers, like say you're just having a chill moment one day, you're watching Netflix, you're just relaxing, pull up the Uber driver app and the Lyft driver app. Look at the opportunities, look at the bonuses, look at the notifications, look at all the little things. I will say I have done videos about the hacks or unique tricks in the driver apps that you probably didn't know. I've been listed below in the description if you want to watch those videos. But I suggest looking at that, because I'm telling you, if you look at the bonuses and incentives, you'd be surprised how much more money you can make just by finding out the best strategies to optimize those. Number 6, avoiding events. This is another big one, because events, in my opinion, usually have the high surges period, even more a lot of times than a Friday or Saturday night, especially when it comes to events ending. And on the Uber driver app and on the Lyft driver app, you can even add notifications. You could see some suggestions like, hey, this is where we think the peak time is going to be. Like if it's a sports game, like a basketball game, for example, that's going on from, I don't know, 8 p.m. to like 9:45 or whatever, they might say, hey, start driving at 10. So Uber and Lyft would suggest this. Because when I first started driving, and let's say it'd be a Wednesday night, I wouldn't even think about looking to events. I wouldn't even consider driving. I'm like, it's a Wednesday night. But then I remember I started to look at, again, more basketball games, sporting games going on, concerts, conferences, graduations, any event. And I realized, like, wait a minute. 1, these surges are higher. They're actually paying more money than a Friday and Saturday night. And 2, it's a Wednesday night. In the sense that, let's say that Friday night, if I want to go out, if let's say I want to have a DJ gig, let's say I do have a DJ gig, I'd much rather, let's say, drive on a Tuesday and Wednesday night when I'm not planning on going out anyway, make a ton of money, make more money because of the surges, and then go out that weekend. And that's a big thing. Events can be absolutely massive. And that's why I suggest when it comes to the apps, look into the events and they will tell you like, hey, this is a conference. There's this, event going on. There's a bajillion things that could be happening, right? Because sometimes I think, especially for beginning drivers, you almost, and I've noticed this, just avoid the week. And a lot of beginning drivers think about the weekends. And it makes sense. The weekends can be really packed. One unique curveball is this. One issue with Uber and Lyft right now, especially in the time of this video, is too many drivers being on the road. With the economy and a lot going on, a lot of drivers are saying, hey, a lot of people, let me take that back, are saying, hey, I need a second job. Why not drive for Uber and Lyft? Best secondary job you can have, right? And it makes sense. And so a lot of those drivers usually go on Friday and Saturday nights. And when I've interviewed a lot of drivers recently, it's almost this paradox that because so many drivers are on the road now, so many people are driving for Uber and Lyft, what is the most common thought? Friday and Saturday nights, which means I've had drivers tell me like, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, on a Friday night, I actually get paid less than on a Wednesday night because there's so many drivers, only a certain amount of rides to go around. It's a bit harder. But when it comes to the events are the big thing a lot of rookie drivers avoid and overlook, or maybe don't even consider. They don't even think about it as like a potential revenue earning opportunity. But I'm telling you, events can be unbelievably high paying. Number 7, accounting. Now I want to stress, I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant, so I want to say that. But in case you didn't know, when you first start driving or when you start driving or you're driving in general, you're going to be a 1099. You're going to be an independent contractor, which means you pay taxes at the end. Taxes don't get taken out. So I'm going to give you 2 big pro tips overall when it comes to accounting. I've already done a bunch of accounting videos on this channel in terms of the taxes with Uber and Lyft and everything. One, the best advice I can give, hire a tax accountant. Just do it. I pay, I think $250 or $300 for my tax accountant. Well worth the money because they're going to know exactly how to optimize your earnings along with your expenses and write-offs and all this kind of stuff. Hire a tax accountant. I'll also say as like the flip side of that pro tip, don't use tax software. Tax software usually gives kind of like a one-size-fits-all situation. But as you can imagine, when it comes to taxes, there are a lot of gray areas. So I suggest hire a tax accountant, like a CPA, tax accountant. Just do it. Someone that lives, eats, and breathes taxes. Definitely the way to go. Second thing, keep track of all your expenses. Now, Uber and Lyft does have things under their systems that track, like say, your miles and everything, and that's very helpful. But I also suggest any single time, this is a big kind of pro tip I give you, any single time you do something that what you're considering is the ordinary and necessary, those are the 2 main words, ordinary and necessary course of being a driver. If you have that expense, save that receipt. Just mark it somewhere, just do this in your notes, however you want to do it. Just mark it down and keep track of it. Or to use a more simple question is, are you buying this for fun or are you buying it with the primary purpose of driving for Uber and Lyft? For example, like I mentioned with the big 3, if let's say you buy a phone mount because you're like, hey, I didn't have one before, but if I'm driving, I might as well get one, write off. If let's say you're buying a dash cam, which you should, write off. If let's say you already have a phone charger, but let's say you're buying a second one just for driving for Uber and Lyft because you want to be able to pass it back and have people be able to charge their phone, write off. Basically, any single time you buy something, like say maintenance on your car can get a little tricky, right? So these things get a bit of gray area because it could be personal, it could be business, sometimes a combination. But any single time you're buying something and your main idea or one of your main ideas is, this is for Uber and Lyft, keep track of it and let your tax accountant know about it and then let them decide if you can write it off or not. Number 8, a clean car. Now I know. And you're like, dude, the most obvious advice. It seems obvious, and it seems too captained obvious, but you'd be surprised, or maybe not, how many cars are not clean. And I'm talking about the outside of your car, the inside of your car, and then, of course, the smell. This is a big thing. I mean, because if you think about it, your first impression when someone, let's say, goes to walk towards your car is the outside of it. So if your car is, let's say, really nice on the inside, but the first impression is a dirty vehicle on the outside, not the best thing. Now, when I drove in Boston, wasn't a big issue because 1, it rained a lot. And 2, if let's say it was snowing and there's a bunch of sleet, people kind of have a little bit of an expectation or just like being like, oh yeah, I get it. He's been driving in the snow. His cars can't be spotless, right? But here in LA, I have to get my car washed a lot because it very rarely ever rains here in LA. Make sure the outside of your car looks good. In addition, the inside, just make sure it looks clean and presentable. I also say the smell is a big thing. Like one huge pro tip I do have, if you want to get it, is get like maybe Febreze or something because you can get very used to the smell of your own car. And I think if anything, I think for most people, if I had to guess, I think most people would probably rather have maybe a dirtier car. Most people rather have a car that, is dirty compared to a car that smells bad. A bad smelling car is not the position you want to be in. Even if, let's say, it doesn't smell bad, but let's say someone gets McDonald's and comes to the car and it reeks of that like Mickey D smell. Just get Febreze as a little pro tip, but I'm telling you, this is one that you'd think I wouldn't have to mention. But I take a lot of Ubers, I take a lot of Lyfts when I'm going out and filming all this kind of stuff. Make sure you have a clean car. Number 9, safety. This is a big one that I want to say, I'm not trying to scare any drivers, especially like say if you just started driving and you're watching this video. I'm not trying to scare any new drivers, but you do want to be safe as possible. So there are a couple things I will say. One, when someone goes to get in your car, I always suggest ask them like, hey, what's your name? Don't say their name, because I know a lot of beginning drivers, this is something that I did, is I'd be like, Amanda, and they'd be like, yeah, or Mike, or whatever. Don't do that. Say, hey, what's your name? And then they say, hey, I'm Tom. I'm like, okay, Tom. Sometimes you can say, hey, what's my name? I know some drivers do this. It's like a double check. What's your name? What's my name? I don't think you have to go that all out, but just make sure that you're getting that right information, because on a Friday and Saturday night, there's been some times where, like, say, and I know this from some beginning drivers, we say, hey, Amanda, and she goes, yeah, I'm Amanda, but she's inebriated, she's not thinking right, she got in your car, which is a red Prius, but there's a lot of red Priuses, and she picked the wrong one. So you want to double check that you're getting with the right person. In addition, I do suggest studying on the Uber driver app and the Lyft driver app the safety features. Incidents and stuff like that are very, very rare. I know we see a lot of news articles about it, but if you look at the statistics, it is unbelievably rare. And with all that happening, with a lot of those news articles, Uber and Lyft has put in a tremendous amount of safety features. Like, say if something's going down with a passenger, you can call 911 in a very subtle way on your phone. You can record conversations. In addition, make sure you have the dash cam. In addition, as well, you can even have something where, like, say, your friend can see where your location is at all times. I know that's common on a lot of iPhones, for example, with Find My iPhone and Find My Friends, but it's also a big thing when it comes to Uber. Like, say if they don't have an iPhone, you want to share it. There's a lot of safety features in general. And so this is a big thing I do suggest for all my drivers out there, that just be aware of the safety features on the app. Make sure that you're getting or having the right person get into your car. Just have these policies and checks in place. Again, an incident happening, I really do have to stress, is very, very rare, but it can happen. And being as safe as possible is always a good idea. Number 10, test. This is a big one that I have to stress, kind of combining those 2 points I said earlier that were really important. The driving randomly, and then also the bonuses, always test. I want to make it this own point, because like I mentioned right in the beginning, for point number 1, I first started driving for Lyft. Had no desire to go to Uber. Again, rookie mistake. And then I went to Uber, and I was like, wait, Uber's paying more. And I could have very easily fallen into this trap of being like, wait a minute, Uber's better than Lyft. Done deal. And I was driving for Uber. But then my accountant mind was like, wait a minute, well, I've been driving for Uber for 2 months. Well, let me give Lyft a whirl. Let me give Lyft a test. And then I realized, wait a minute, Lyft is paying more. Went back to Lyft. This is a big thing I suggest, because it's not just about driving randomly or not. It's not just about looking at the bonuses, but it's always, every so often, just trying to figure new stuff out. Like I mentioned before, it could be that in your area, Lyft pays way more on the weekends, but not as much during the week. It could be that Uber pays more during the week, but not as much on the weekends. In addition, to give you another interesting thing, there's something called Tower TV. I believe it only exists here in LA, but you could actually go through their program, and they have a unique program where they pay you a flat amount per hour. I think it's 20 to 25. And I've talked to some drivers who are like, yeah, I drive for Tower EV. I drive for them during the week because I've tested it out. During the week, 25 an hour on average is the best way to go, where I get a flat fee of 25 an hour. But then on the weekends, I drive for Uber normally on my own, not with Tower EV, because I make more money. Now, there are a million examples like this I could give, but I think the biggest thing I can say is to constantly be testing over and over again. And I know this probably seems like a lot. Like, I think after a while, you probably will get used to it. I think after a while, like if you've not driven for a while, you start to notice, like, okay, when that app pops up, or the app notification of Uber or Lyft saying, hey, we have a new ride. Do you want to do this one? You'll instantly know, is this a good ride or not? You'll instantly know, let's say after driving for Uber and then driving for Lyft, which app pays more based off all these different metrics. And I think this is a big thing that over time, I think for a lot of drivers, what I've noticed, who don't make that much money, they become very complacent to just do what they've always done. I think they have a mentality of, if it's not broke, why try to fix it type mentality. And in some ways, I get it, right? In some ways, I get it, because you don't want to be mind-blowingly stressed to constantly be running mathematical equations while driving, right? But there is something to be said that if you're constantly testing and seeing what app is doing better, that's a big thing. Like I said, after only driving for Uber for about 2 or 3 months, I went back to Lyft when I first started driving, because I noticed that for whatever reason at that time, Lyft was now paying more, right? If I never tested that, I'd be making less money. So a big thing I suggest, always test. as much as you can. Now, a bonus tip: study the app features. This is a big thing I think a lot of beginning drivers do not do. There's a tremendous amount of features in the Uber driver app and the Lyft driver app you probably didn't know about. Some of them can allow you to make more money. Some revolve around events, notifications. Some revolve around safety features like I talked about. There is a bajillion features in these apps that are very, very useful. Like destination filters is another big one, right? I mean, there's so many things that these apps can do that a lot of beginning drivers don't even know about, which is why I suggest watch the videos I have listed below in the description. I also have been having them appear here of different hacks in the Uber driver app you probably didn't know, and in the Lyft driver app you probably didn't know, because these hacks and these tricks can allow you to make way more money.